Hey, it's Erica from Autofluencer back at you with another Creators and Coffee. And today I am super excited to have joining me the brand director for Redline Oil, Mark Beatty. Hey, Mark.
How are you doing, Erica? Thank you for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. So this is
I
fun stuff.
It totally is. And, we do a lot on Creators and Coffee. We have a lot of drivers on, we have a lot of creators on, and we've been a little lighter on having our brand partners on. So excited to talk from the brand angle of
Yeah.
building strong partnerships, building strong. Obviously, Redline has Team Redline Oil. You guys have sponsorships. So I'm excited to talk from the brand perspective because we do get a lot of questions, both from other brands as well as from drivers and creators. So excited to launch into that. But first off, why don't you tell everybody kind of what does the brand director do? And and how long have you been doing it? Give a little bit of your background.
I'll start with my background. My background is I've been in the automotive and the racing world my entire life, from being a racer myself to owning and managing, businesses and everything. It's always been around motorsports in some form or another. So I'm a car guy through and through. So I've been brand director of Redline Oil now for going on 5 years, and in my current role, I mean, obviously, one of the big things I keep an eye on is brand standards. Our logo, our name, and is out there in a lot of different ways and fashions. So I try and keep an eye on all that, make sure that all the labels that we have and everything that we do, we're portraying the image that we want, out there. And then I also am marketing director, so I kind of cross over and take care of all the marketing side of things as well. So kind of in the brand and the marketing world, I'm a one man band. I mean, there's a phenomenal team at Redline Oil, but in my little space, it's kind of a one person deal.
Yeah, and I would add to this, you're not just marketing director, you're also sponsorship partnership
Oh
manager
yeah.
as well,
Yeah,
right?
that's a really, really, really big part of what we do. You kind of touched on it in the introduction about Team Redline Oil, and Team Redline Oil is something that we launched, the hashtag about 3 years ago, and it's such a crazy story because we almost launched it as honestly it was a joke between me and one of my friends. We were kind of talking one night. We're like, "Well, yeah, Team Redline Oil," and then I'm like going, "Huh, you know, that's kind of fun." And so the next day, we kind of started the process and building out Team Redline Oil, and it's crazy, how it took off and the things that it does or whatever. So we love it. It's awesome.
And I think too, just to touch on that of how you wear all these different hats. It's funny, you have a hat behind you on the wall. Literally, you wear different hats. Some people would assume because Redline Oil is owned by Phillips 66 that there's this all of these humans, that are there working on marketing, that are doing all these different things, but it really is you. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, Phillips 66 is a huge company, and there are lots of people. I work out of corporate headquarters here in Houston, Texas, and I mean, it's a really big building. But Phillips, one of the really good things about them, they're a lean and efficient,
Mm.
company. So people have very specific jobs and very specific tasks, and there's not a lot of extra things happening. So they do a really good job of making sure that everything kind of stays lean and mean and stuff. And so that's with me. We just make it
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. And to that end, so let's talk about Team Red Line Oil. I know you said it started kind of as a joke a few years ago. Once you first rolled it out versus where you're at now, 3 years, because when you and I first met, you're like, oh, it's just a few people. But you guys have like 90 people in your over 90 different drivers, all at different levels of partnership. But where did you start and how has it grown of like what Team Red Line Oil looks like?
Every year we open up an application process on our website where racers and riders in all walks of life can go online and they can apply to be a part of Team Redline Oil. And truthfully, this year I actually just shy of 500 teams and riders that are on Team Redline Oil. So, we have various levels, discount programs, and things like that with each one of the teams. And it's kind of based upon, I mean, after they apply, one of the first things I do is I look at their social engagement. How engaged are they on social media? How active are they on social media? Because that really kind of determines at what level we'll start talking to them at, right? Because at the end of the day, I tell people all the time, and I'm kind of jumping all the way in, but free oil's not free to me. I mean, free oil costs me money out of budget and stuff, and so in the end, really, I need something more than just a decal on a car or a decal on a bike. I need brand ambassadors out there. I need people that are really talking. And I say it all the time. It's like, I don't have the budget. In the motorsports space, whoever has the tallest soapbox or the loudest microphone gets the most amount of attention. And that's a
Right.
pay to play world, right? So you have to have a lot of money. You have to have a lot of budget to do that. And I don't. And so I use the members of Team Redline Oil to take me to places that I can't afford to go myself. I can't afford to buy my way into every engine builder's dyno room. I can't afford to buy my way into the back door of every racer's trailer. So I try and find team members that will take me there because they can walk into their competitors or their friends or their neighbor's trailer, or they can walk into their engine builder's dyno room and have the conversations that we can't have. And
Yeah.
so it's really an integral part of who we are and what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really is, you just nailed it on how to describe the value of a partnership, right? Besides, I mean, obviously our tool, we give a number and we do these other things, but it is
Yeah.
something I think people forget. Like you can't be at every race and you go to a lot. Like you travel, but
Oh
like
yeah.
just what, a couple weekends ago, you were out at a race and there was literally that same weekend in April at least 15 other events I knew about, that were going on across, you know, bikes, drag racing, off road racing, drift racing. I mean, right now we're at that confluence, April, May, where all of the seasons overlap. Like, we don't, in motorsports, you don't have like what they have in, I think, other traditional sports where like, oh, baseball might only lap with football for like a month. We're like,
Right.
all of these worlds overlap and you guys play in all of them, right?
Yeah,
So it
we
is.
definitely yeah, we definitely do. There's if it has a motor or wheels or it doesn't even have to have wheels, I mean, we're the official oil of the American Powerboat Association. So even if it floats, we're if it's got a motor, we're a part of it. So you're right, Erica. I mean it's about teamwork,
Yeah.
hence Team Red Line
Red Line
Oil,
Oil,
right?
yeah.
So we rely on the people that are part of the team or whatever, once again, to carry our voice and to carry our brand. And so in exchange, from my side of the fence, it's I have a different philosophy a lot of times in marketing and in branding. It's like if you ever really look at a lot of the things that we put out there, we don't put out a lot of things that talk about red line oil first.
Right.
Okay. We put most of the stuff out there that we're talking about others first. We're talking about our team members. We're talking about our racers. We're talking about our riders. It's the old saying, and whoever came, I wish I knew who came up with it because it's so accurate. A high tide, raises all boats. And so my philosophy has always been as a brand, if I spend our time and our energy and I lift up those riders and those drivers and those teams that carry our flag, well, then we naturally rise with them.
Yeah.
And so it's so important to me. It's not about red line oil first. It's about all of them first with us and together. And so I think that helps. I think that helps them feel ownership in part of Team Red Lion Oil. I think that helps them, feel like what they say and what they do matters because it honestly does. I mean, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I mean, people that know me, I mean, I try and communicate well and things like that. And I get it. I was a racer for a long time, and I understand their limitations and I understand their challenges because I was a racer long before I was a brand director. And so
Yeah.
I just always try and relate back to, okay, when I was racing, here's what mattered to me,
Yep.
or here's what we could do and stuff. So I never forget those days.
Yeah, and I think that that is really powerful because you do have that racing background. So you do
Hmm.
have that empathy for what they're going through and just how hard it is, right? And
Oh
now
man.
when you were racing, there wasn't the added pressure of it's not enough to just have that, that car that but whatever it is out there on those weekends and do the travel and be away from family or all these other things. But now you also have to have a camera on everything,
Oh
right? Now you have to
yeah.
be on social media. You have to write a quippy little hook. You have to think about a strategy outside of your racing strategy. You now have to have a true marketing strategy as a driver, and it's a whole new world. And so that empathy you have is really powerful. And I see that in other people like Krista Baldwin over at McLeod. She's got both sides as a marketing director, is now a team owner, and a driver herself. She certainly has that empathy, for their partners that they work with. But you said some two things that just really resonate. So first of all, I absolutely love the rising tide, raises all boats because it is so true. And I wish there was an automotive analogy to it.
Yeah.
I'm always like
Yeah.
smooth crack. Oh wait, what about off road?
That'd be
Like
awesome.
we don't need an
Yeah.
automotive one, but it is so true. And we think very much the same way. And but where I see that in you, so I just have to talk about this because it's something that stands out so much with all those hats that you're wearing and all the different things that you do put those drivers. We see it in real life. You don't just say it on a podcast or whatever. So if anybody follows you on LinkedIn, I will say follow Mark on LinkedIn. We actually just did our newsletter, shameless plugs. So I'm for Trendy AF, a whole issue on. There are a whole edition of the newsletter about LinkedIn and the power of LinkedIn and motorsports. I'm seeing more and more motorsports content on LinkedIn. You always are sharing information about your racers, you're sharing information about the drivers you sponsor. Pretty much everything you post on your LinkedIn is about people in Team Redline Oil. I rarely ever see you be
Yeah.
like, oh, Redline Oil, like your typical product marketing. And it's more
Yeah.
about those drivers. And I think that celebration of your like sponsored drivers is so powerful, but you don't just do it publicly. I think one thing that's really cool is, which a lot of the drivers probably don't know, you send an email internally, and this is a big plug to all of the brands watching this every Monday without fail. You send an email to all different managers and stuff within Redline Oil, Phillips 66 about what Team Redline Oil did over the weekend. And it is long, and there's lots of images and links, and it is so amazing how much you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. How did that get started?
Well,
Of you
well,
sending that email, and what has the reaction been internally, and how does that, what does that mean to you?
I mean, thank you for that. When I started, Redline was like this best kept secret inside of Phillips 66. I mean, we're kind of going back again. Once again, Phillips 66 is a huge company, 20, 30,000 employees. I don't even know the number, anymore. Between their 76 gas stations and Conoco, and I mean, they've got some really, really big things. And so Redline was just kind of like this sliver that some people knew about, some people didn't. And so
Right.
one of the first things I took upon myself was just making sure it's like, okay, the only way people are going to understand what we're about and what we're trying to do, honestly, is just to share with them and to show them. And so I kind of started this deal a couple years ago where every morning, you're right, I select first off, everybody from the production people that are in our plant in Selmer, Tennessee, to our distribution center, to our technicians in Bartlesville, and just anybody that touches any part of Redline. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, they're included in on this email, and then obviously some upper management folks, on up from there. So it's like it's just a way for me to make sure that everybody sees and shares what we were talking about earlier, the passion
More.
that Team Redline Oil members and racers and riders have out there for our brand, there's something magical and there's something special about that. Like I said, I've been in this industry my whole life, and I don't know that I've ever witnessed or seen what this group does for a brand like they do for us. I hope that if there's other brand people watching this or end up watching this, I hope they all celebrate and see the same thing. I hope I'm not on an island by myself, but all I know is I've just never really seen it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, I think part of it is because of you. Because you do celebrate them, right? Like they
Yeah.
feel it, like you said, they feel the love from their brand partner and the respect that you have for what they do. So then it reciprocates. And I think that's a really, I mean, besides having a great product, but I think that's a really important message. Sometimes brand directors or marketing directors I have seen who I've met with, they see these relationships or sponsorships not as a necessary evil. I don't wanna say that, but they'll be like, "Ugh." It's like almost like a checklist thing. Like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this to get the word out, so we're gonna do this," or, and it's
Yep.
like, if that is the person who's managing your sponsor program, if they're seeing it as a task to get done, you might not have the right personality there because it may not yield the same benefits if there wasn't the true passion and support and love behind it.
I mean, I hate to be critical of anybody else, but you're probably right. I mean, I think it has to be something. It's like my phone is 24/7. I share with people all the time. It's like either every Thursday or Friday before a big race, and I don't care if it's an NHRA race, a PDRA race, or Supercross race. It doesn't matter. I try and send out a quick text message to every member of Team Redline Oil that I know is participating at those events, and my text message is the same every Thursday, every Friday. It's be safe, have fun, and enjoy the moments. And so on Thursday or Friday, my wife, on Thursday night, she looks at me like I'm mental because
Yeah.
I'm texting for an hour,
Yeah.
sometimes or whatever and stuff. And it's just because it matters to me, right? I want them all to know that hey, even though I'm not there, I'm thinking about you, just and the big key, the part I like the most about that deal is just enjoy the moments
Yeah.
because racing, riding, whatever, it's a privilege. I mean, it can be gone in a heartbeat, right? I mean, through sponsorships, through injury, through financial, through whatever the case may be. So it's just like, man, just everybody just enjoy the moments
I love
because
it.
they're
I
special.
love that. And I think too is when we think about a sponsor program and a true partnership program really is what you've built through Team Redline Oil. I think that that means a lot to the drivers too. Even if it's just a racer discount program that someone is reaching out and thinking about them. I can't tell you how many drivers or creators or influencers will say, "Yeah, I did this thing for this brand and posted all this great content and then I never heard anything from them." Even if you don't renew the part, like that really it does hurt their feeling because they do put a lot of effort into it, whether it's racing, whether it's creating a piece of content, whatever it is their passion. It's their and so that acknowledgement I think goes such a long way to truly build. And again, I think it's reciprocal. You,
Yeah, yeah.
support them not just in the product, but in that you're thinking about them and they will reciprocate back. And I think that's something really powerful. I see that another brand I see that with a lot is QA1. I had Casey from there on a Creators of Coffee, and I even asked her, I'm like, do you guys ask all of your influencers or creators to like have their image like of the thumbnail to be of your product when you send them something? She was like, no, I haven't. I've never asked them that. I was like, well, what's funny is it always is. It's like
That
they
is,
just know. And I think it's because they know Casey,
yep,
everybody calls her QA1 Casey. They know how much she cares and they want to make her proud, and the brand proud. So I think it's something to think about as a marketing director. It is so much more than sending a product and getting a piece of content. It is building a relationship and it is very reciprocal. They will respond. Drivers and creators will respond in kind. And I think that's something to keep
Yeah,
aware.
I agree. It has to go both ways, and it's always tough on me. It's like, we go to the SEMA show and PRI show. That's obviously the time of year where, we get hit up a lot. And like I said, we open up our sponsorship application September 1st, and it goes through Halloween every single year. And it's nothing to have, 600, 700 applicants, and for me it's always tough because sometimes you just simply have to say no, right? You can't do everything for everybody, but I always try and think back of that person is hopefully putting all they have into their racing, right? It matters to
Right.
them. Not everybody can bring you TV time. Not everybody can bring
Yeah.
you 1 million followers,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that they're not passionate about what they're doing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't matter to them. Always try and pay attention to all that type of stuff, but without a doubt, the very, very worst part of my job is having to tell people or events or things like that no, because I understand and I respect what they have going on, but as a brand director and a marketing person, I'm just limited sometimes. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to say no.
Yeah. It does happen.
Yep.
So let's talk about that you just mentioned. So the if someone wants to be on Team Red Line Oil, that opens up the start of September. The application process goes. It is predominantly for most of the people in that program. It is a racer discount,
Yep.
right? You're not,
Yep.
as you said, while Red Line Oil is owned by a big company, you guys aren't slinging out. You're not Monster, right? And
Yeah.
so very different margins in your world versus Monster's world. So, um, but what is it that you do look for, right? What is it that you're looking for? You mentioned a few things earlier, but if we had to put it all right here so we can clip it into a reel.
Honestly, the first thing I pay attention to is their social engagement. I mean, I truly do. You have to be active on social media because at the end of the day, like I said, think about as a brand. Think about maybe the two or three things that I get out of it, and even discounted oil isn't free oil to me. It still hits a budget. So I get a decal on something. Well, in most race cars, most race series, most bikes, most whatever, that means I could be one of
Right.
25 decals on a car.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or
so
50.
so it's important. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not minimizing that, but so I get a decal on a car, and what? If they're not active on social media, if they're not promoting themselves, there's no way that they could promote us as a brand. And so the very first thing I look for is what are you doing socially? And so and it doesn't even have to be it's I'm not looking for somebody that's got, like I said, 1 million
Right.
followers because we can't all have 1 million followers, but it's like, are you consistent? Even if you don't think there's eyeballs on what you're doing,
Stay consistent. Yeah.
are you dedicated enough to keep doing it? Because
Right.
you're never going to grow if
Yeah.
if you don't keep trying.
Yeah.
So social is a really, really big part of what I look for in
Yeah.
in team
Yeah.
members. Very, very big.
And that's a great point too, as a reminder to the drivers. Look, it's not about, I've seen people kind of give up, right? Because they're like, well, it's not
Yeah,
growing. I can't get past 5,000 or 7,000. But that consistency is
yeah,
key, right? And in some cases, to your point around the decal, I know they think, oh, you only have 7,000 followers or 5,000 followers. Depending on the series, 5,000 followers on social, and if you're posting once or twice a week, you have only half or a third of your followers see it. That is more than is ever
yeah,
going to see the decal on the vehicle at the actual physical races. Like,
yeah. There's no
you know?
doubt. You're right.
And so that is, getting out there and you have the double kind of the double whammy as do a lot of our partners of your product can't be seen. You're not a helmet, you're not a fire suit, you're not the wheels. So it's not an obvious thing, right? Like it goes
Mm-mm.
inside the vehicle. Like they can do a
Yeah.
video like, "Ooh, owning my oil," they can do that video, but it's not something that is this constant visual focal point in content.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is something where that helps that social content because someone could look at your vehicle, they can tell what wheels you're running. They have no idea what oil is in that vehicle.
Yeah, and it's such a consumable. I did a bit of podcast a while back, and we are kind of talking about that. That it's difficult to go to a tire company, or it's difficult to go to an oil company, or a consumable like that, and ask for money, because the vast majority of the programs are product discounts, or products, because we go through so much of that, right? I
Right.
mean, if we were a wheel company, depending on the race deal, you give away a set of wheels a
Right.
year. So it depends on the product, on whether or not money comes into play sometimes, or whatever, and stuff like that. So being a consumable, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can count on, I tell people all the time, I can count on one hand how many racers out there actually get any financial support from Redline.
Right.
And even those that I can count on one hand, it's because there's another layer of business associated with that.
Right. And
Right,
that's a relationship that you
right,
have built over
right,
years.
right,
And that is
exactly.
something too. I was just talking to someone, they do kind of a more of a mainstream influencer conference. And we were talking about kind of the nuance and the differences between enthusiast industries like this and kind of mainstream. And I was like, 90% of the creators on our platform, 90 to 95%, they all have day jobs. Like very few get paid because they need these products. Now, I mean, obviously our goal is through transparency of data, we can actually help brands that don't even have any paid relationships be like, look, there could be value in paying this person because look at what it's doing. And if you were to leverage this, to your point, across multiple different things, across your own advertising, across your own messaging, your communications on your website, there's a lot of power in that versus paying someone $10,000 or $5,000 to create a one-off ad that
Yeah,
is
no,
probably not gonna resonate.
yeah, no
So,
question about it.
yeah,
So, and for me too, and edit this in or delete this as it is. What's interesting for me is that I learned in business a long time ago that, and it's a really fun story. It involves the sign shop in Denver Nuggets, which was my very first customer when I had a sign shop. I learned the lesson of it, you do business with those that do business with you, right? I mean, it's as old business adage and stuff like that. So often I get hit up by an influencer or somebody like that that wants me to fund them in one way or another, and when I stop and I do my research, I see that everything they've done historically, they've been promoting another brand. And so obviously that relationship soured, or everybody moved on, and so it's like I'm just the next cog in the wheel. Okay, I
correct.
used to do it for this brand, they're gone, so now I'm going to do it for this brand. As to where, for me, it's like, I'm never going to be the flavor of the month. I'm not interested in people that are like that. It cheapens them and it cheapens me, and cheapens our brand. But then it's the same type of deal. It's like, if you've never ever even bought a quart of our product, why in the world would I want to give you a discount
Right,
to
right.
to buy it? So it's like, like, we can tell that the avid users and the people that use it, the people that race, the people that do those type of things. So when they come talk to me, the first look is a whole lot different, right? Because they've made an investment in us, and now we can take the next step in that relationship, like we're talking about.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot from brands,
Y-
right?
Yeah,
So I think
yeah,
somewhere along the line, people thought there was a thing like a conquest, like, oh, there's value in the conquest. And that's not as
mm,
much of a thing. People would much rather like a raving fan, someone who's already a fan that is already passionate about your product, to be a partner. Just like we were saying before, if the passion's already there, that chance of amplification is so much greater versus trying to convert a skeptic, you know? So now, last couple things. What is just something a partner, a team red line oil person, just something that they've done that as part of the partnership just really stood out to you as like, wow, that was really awesome. Like what is something someone did that just really impressed you from a partnership standpoint? And then I'll ask you the other side of that coin. What is something someone did besides using your competitors that was really kind of like a turnoff of like, ooh, maybe about not doing that?
One of my favorite stories is we're fortunate enough to be teamed up with four-time NHRA world champion Steve Torrance and his Top Fuel car. And so Steve and Bobby and Hogan and the whole gang, they're phenomenal to begin with. But Steve's wife Natalie came to us about 3 years ago, and their little girl Charlie was running around in a little walking scooters, for kids or whatever. So she had the idea of having scooter races.
Oh,
And so she grabbed Carly and went around to four other, professional teams. And so at three NHRA national events, right before the final qualifying session of Top Fuel, we went right in front of the grandstands and we called it the Baby Walker Nationals. And so we had baby walker races right in front of the and then a couple years later, as the kids got bigger, we outfitted them with trikes, and so we did trike races and stuff. And
well,
so
yes.
it was just one of those deals to where it didn't cost anybody anything enough to matter, right? But it but the fans in the stands and the fans on TV during the NHRA broadcast just went absolutely crazy. I mean, everything was branded Redline. All the kids had Redline shirts on. All the walkers and the trikes had Redline all over them and stuff like that. And so it's that creative. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah.
You could have waved $1 million bills in front of me, and I never thought about doing that. But it's just the creative way that so many people think and the wonderful things that they do. So it's just yeah,
I
the
love
Baby
that.
Walker Nationals are
Baby
are
Walker
prob
Nationals.
are probably one of my favorite things to do. So
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's
yeah.
awesome. Now, what about something that someone did that was just like ooh, I would highly encourage you not to do that.
Wow, that one's really tough, right? Um
Or a pet peeve around like things. Well, we already mentioned one, which is pet peeve. Don't be using our competitor and be like, hey, you
yeah,
could conquest me for a discount.
yeah.
So that's
You
not
know,
a good
pro-
tactic. What's another not good tactic?
and a lot of times what we try and do with members of Team Red Line Oil is that we try and form strategic partnerships with, I touched on it before, with maybe like engine builders that they use, or shock manufacturers that they use, or transmission companies that they use, and things like that, to where, can we bring in a B2B element side of things. And so, a couple of times, not luckily not very often, but a couple of times, I've been led astray. We put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, just to find out that the racer in this company maybe don't have the relationship that we were told, they had. And so it's a really small industry. So it'd be just don't try and pull wool over our
Right.
eyes. I mean, be honest.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that makes me think of kind of this classic adage, right? Of like, don't overpromise and underdeliver.
there you go.
Underpromise and
Yeah,
overdeliver. Right?
yeah.
Like you
There
will
you go.
get so much more. I mean, it's kind of that classic Zappos. thing of where they underpromised and they said, "Oh, it'll take 3 to 5 days," and then they always tried to get it there in 2 days. So then you're like,
Yeah.
"What?" Like, it was so
Yeah.
exciting? So,
I agree. That's a great point.
yeah, and I think people don't do it, it's not always intentional, it's not malicious
No,
necessarily, but sometimes we get a little over our skis and a little overzealous, and maybe exaggerate a little bit, and you don't have to do that.
no, I mean, you're right. We're only human. I mean, we all want to put forth a great impression, and we want to do all that type of stuff. So I totally get it. It's never destroyed a relationship in my world or things like that or whatever. It's just, as a brand, it just gets complicated because we throw a lot of resources at something trying to figure something out to turn out that it's not. So yeah, I'm like you. Just take your time. Just chill. I mean, if it's meant to be, we'll get there.
It'll get there. So,
It'll
well,
get
with
there.
that, Mark, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. This was awesome. And again, drivers, mark your calendar. September 1st, Team Redline Oil opens up, and brands take some notes, right? It's more than just a product partnership sponsorship, it is a partnership. So,
Yep.
if you love on your drivers, they'll love on you back. So, with that, I will say goodbye, Mark.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.